Just like many Black Americans, the Jackson family's exact African lineage is almost impossible to determine, as their African ancestors were more than likely undocumented as they were enslaved and brought over to the United States from the west coast of Africa. However, various members of the Jackson family have previously identified the ancient town of Badagry, a coastal town in Nigeria, as their place of origin, with Michael Jackson's brother, Marlon Jackson, visiting Nigeria and claiming the historic town as the place of his ancestors. In some articles, it has been said that the Ajanizan family, a sub-tribe from Igun in Badagry, remain as descendants of the Jacksons. As a result, Michael Jackson is referred as Michael Ajanizan in Badagry, and according to a traditional priest from the Igun community, the fame that Michael Jackson attained in the U.S. had long been predicted by the deity to which the family belonged to, as Michael Ajanizan was a deity himself. He claimed that it was only a god that could perform the feat that Michael Jackson was able to attain in life, although this all remains as spoken history and of course cannot be proven. In 1974, the Jackson family visited Africa in hopes of deepening their connection with their African heritage, as well as perform to thousands of their fans on the continent. By this time, Michael Jackson joined a rich group of African-American predecessors, including James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, Tina Turner, and Aretha Franklin. Michael Jackson arrived in Senegal as part of the Jackson 5, originally named the African Tour. The Motown brothers were billed to play Ghana, Zambia, and Ethiopia, but the trip was cut short. Instead, they remained in Senegal, making trips out to Dakar to Joal, a fishing village, and Gorée Island, a departure point for Africans captured and sold into slavery. This first trip to Africa was formative for the artist, with Michael Jackson later saying, quote, "It was a visit to Senegal that made us realize how fortunate we were and how our African heritage had helped to make us what we were. We visited an old abandoned slave camp at Gorée Island, and we were so moved. The African people had given us gifts of courage and endurance that we couldn't hope to repay." In an interview with Ebony magazine, the teenager explained how he fell in love with the continent. Quote, "We were greeted by a long line of African dancers. Their drums and sounds filled the air with rhythm. I was going crazy. I was screaming. They got the beat and they got the rhythm. This is where I come from." Michael Jackson then later recounted how those trips inspired him musically. Quote, "The rhythms are incredible. You can tell especially the way the children move. When they hear the drums, they start to move. The rhythm, the way it affects their soul." As reflected in future musical output like Thriller's "Wanna Be Startin' Somethin'" and the Bad Album's "Liberian Girl," Michael Jackson expanded the global confines of music in order to celebrate Africa's beauty, rhythm, and spirit. However, the latter track was geographically mixed up, as the song which lauds the beauty of a woman from Liberia, West Africa, was actually opened in Swahili with the South African singer and anti-apartheid campaigner Letta Mbulu, who famously went on to sing "Not Yet, Uhuru" in 1992. In the 1990s, Michael Jackson made a series of high-profile visits to African countries as part of a non-performing tour on the condition that he would be able to visit orphanages, children's hospitals, churches, schools, and playgrounds. In February 1992, Michael Jackson's private plane landed in Abidjan, a populous city in Côte d'Ivoire on the Ivory Coast, where thousands of people were waiting near the tarmac, hoping to meet the superstar. Among the many stops on this trip, Jackson's itinerary included meeting with Tanzania's president to talk about saving African elephants, receiving a medal from the president of Gabon, and visiting various orphanages, hospitals, and churches. But for the biggest honor, Jackson traveled to Krenjabo, a village in the southeastern corner of Ivory Coast. There, the king of pop became Michael Jackson Amalaman Ano, an actual king. In Krenjabo, the Agni people had lived in the kingdom of Sanwi, an African region, since the mid-18th century. Based on mystic readings and possible DNA tests, a tribal chief asserted that Jackson was a descendant of Sanwi royalty and, accordingly, invited him to be crowned king-in-waiting, akin to a prince in the West. Jackson's coronation was full of joy, dancing, and the frenetic sounds of traditional Agni drumming. Jackson put on a colorful traditional toga-style cloth and sat on a golden stool under a sacred tree. Agni chiefs and elders took turns crowning him and chanting, as villagers drummed and women danced to celebrate Jackson's coronation as chief of the Agni and king of the Sanwi. After he was crowned, Jackson gave his thanks in French and English. Then he signed documents to make his coronation official. When asked how it felt to be a real king, Jackson remained humble. Quote, "I never try to think hard about it because I don't want it to go to my head, but it's a great honor." While under the glare of the international press, which concocted a variety of stories, he spent time in Gabon, Egypt, and Tanzania. In Gabon, he was welcomed by people holding signs that read, "Welcome home, Michael." In a May 1992 interview with Ebony magazine, he described the continent as home. Quote, "For me, it's like the dawn of civilization. It's the first place where society existed. It's seen a lot of love. I guess there's that connection because it is the root of all rhythm, everything. It's home." In the late 1990s, Michael Jackson would perform in Africa as part of his History World Tour in Tunis, Tunisia, and in Cape Town, Joburg, and Durban, South Africa. His performance in Cape Town was attended by no one less significant than the first president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, where he met the King of Pop after the show and they became close allies. Mandela described Jackson as, quote, "a close member of our family," and saluted the fact that Jackson had been able to triumph over tragedy on so many occasions in his life. In 1999, standing beside Mandela, MJ said, quote, "I've had the time of my life here. I've had so much fun, I hate to leave, and I'm definitely looking for a home here, to buy, to spend the rest of my life. In my heart, I really love Africa and I love the people of Africa. Topographically, one of the most beautiful places on the surface of the earth. They never show the sandy white sugar beaches, and they never show the beautiful landscaping, never show the buildings, the metropolis and urban. Johannesburg, Cape Town, Kenya, the Ivory Coast, Rwanda. How beautiful the place is. The world is jealous of Africa for many centuries because its natural resources is phenomenal. It really is. And it is the dawn of civilization. The history, a lot of our Bible history is right there in Africa. And King Tut, all those great civilizations. That is right there in Africa.